Hello, viewers. It's another cold winter day. I thought we would look at a book together. And today's book is the Volkswagen Bus book. I've had this for maybe 10, 15 years. I think it was a gift. It was one of the later books that I got. So I looked at some of the dates in here, and it's like 2006, 2007. So it's a bit newer. And I like it very much. The Volkswagen Bus, or I used to call them the Volkswagen van. When I was a little kid, the Volkswagen van was a rusty, loud, cheap vehicle that young people drove, or young families. Like, I would be playing in the front yard and one would go by and you could hear it coming from like 2 blocks away, you know. Some of the older ones that were really rusty and really loud were probably prior to like 73, with those little round lights, like this one that I discovered while I was doing the video, the Christmas video, which I recommend watching, by the way. It's a little music video. It's really short. Let's take a look inside this book and see what's what. It's actually very nice. It's one of my favorite. It has some great photographs in here. So I think this book was printed in the UK. And it says, yes, 2007 right there. Certainly can't read that on the camera. Malcolm Bobbitt by Veloce Publishing, or Veloce, or I don't know how you would say that. There's quite a lot of stuff in here. We're not going to look at the entire book. I mean, I'll flip through it kind of. But there's things about the early days, which has to do with, of course, the Volkswagen van, or Kombi, sprang from the Beetle. It actually was derived from the original Volkswagen. They designed the first prototype in like 1947 to 48, and they didn't start producing it until about 1950. A nice ad picture right there. And the sun is going to be a bit of a challenge today. I'm going to try to keep it out of the shadow for you. So let's take a look at the early days. So, oh, and there's Hitler. Of course. Oh, they have to remind us. Oh, okay. They're going to show us Hitler, and is that Ferdinand Porsche maybe? I think that's him. Yes, it says, it doesn't say who it is, but I recognize him. That's Ferdinand Porsche with Hitler. Oh, God. Why do they why do they have to remind us? Like, thanks. Okay, the vehicles I like is associated with the worst human that ever lived. And here's the Kubelwagen with a fan on the back. That's kind of funny. I mentioned this, or I may have very just offhandedly mentioned the Kubelwagens in my video about Hans Trippel, because Trippel's Schwimmwagens were competition, actually, for the Volkswagen Kubelwagens. And the Kubelwagen's a pretty damn cool vehicle. This is an amphibious car, and it's very similar. If you look at this, you can actually see where the original Volkswagen Thing came from, the 180. That's the official name of the so-called Thing. We call it the Thing over here, but it's just the 180, or 181 maybe, Type 181. Volkswagen Beetle actually kicks off for sale to the public, as the Nazis actually stole the money from the German citizenry to fund the war that they were going to start, and they did not actually distribute the original KDF wagons to the people. They just stole their money. And the British were actually behind getting production started again, which is right here. There's the 1,000th car in March 1946. And some more famous pictures. And then we have the first prototype for the Transporter, which looks... that looks so bad. I am absolutely surprised that this evolved into such a well-known vehicle, because this looks even more primitive and hopeless than those Wendax prototypes that I showed in my video on that car. And if you have not seen that video, I highly recommend it. And there is also a slight connection between Volkswagen and Wendax. It was not an intended connection from Volkswagen's perspective, but it's very funny. Please watch that if you get a chance. It's not that long, and it's very interesting. So now let's see what the Transporter looks like when it finally gets into production. So here it is, the early transporter. Yes, so there's one of the early ones. Development of the transporter commenced in the autumn of 1948, 2 designs being available by November, and a prototype model ready for testing the following March, which is the new prototype. He was saying that this one that I showed earlier, the chassis collapsed while they were testing it. So there's the drawing. That's just, yeah, I think I could qualify to be a car designer in 1947 if that's the only drawing skills necessary. I could do better than that. But by 1949, it looked like this. The likeness of the definitive vehicle to which Ben Pon had sketched is apparent. If they're talking about that sketch, then that's a stretch. The early production transporter, 1949, looks like this. It has no windows, and even the back of it doesn't have any windows. So it's like a very 1930s thing where the rear engine just takes up the whole thing, even though that's the size of the engine right there. And it's the same engine they were using in the Volkswagen Kombi. It's not even a higher displacement. I think it's exactly the same, 1200 cc. Or maybe it's like 1150 cc, and it's a pretty small engine. The first version of the microbus. It looks like it's going to seat maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 people total. And then here is one of the early ones that is still a survivor. So from 1951, this one is from. And I absolutely love it and want it very badly, but I could never afford it, I'm sure. It has the famous split window style, and the front is actually designed to look sort of like a Beetle. That's why it looks like that. That's the reason for the lines coming down to a V like this. It's actually supposed to sort of mock the front of the Kombi sedan and be in a van version. So all it is just supposed to be a larger version of the Beetle. And you can see where the vents are for the engine. They're down here. And no windows, just complete panel van. And the back has no windows. Look at that. It just has the Volkswagen roundel. And there's a huge door here with these tiny little stoplights. That is so amazing. So there's a 51 right there for you. So some more early 50s German engineering. A range of body styles was produced, some of which, including the panel van and Kombi, are seen here under construction in Wolfsburg. It looks a little chaotic, but it says this is from 1955 publicity photo. And then this is a pre-55 Kombi, split window Kombi, down here. But so that's what it looks like in probably about 52, 53, that one. And there's another picture of it here. There is another picture of it. So here's a couple more early ones. The vent on the side, tiny little lights that are just like reflectors. I don't even know if those light up. And on this one, though, the door's gotten a little smaller so that they can have a hatch. And then there's this cutaway right here. Pretty cool. According to this book, this engine, although it definitely has been modified and changed over the years and increased in capacity, but Volkswagen flat 4 engine up to 1600 cc was still in production in Brazil as late as 2005, is what it's saying here in the caption. And this is the author's own material from this picture. And yeah, I've got a lot of material too. I can't count this in it, but having kind of pictures like this is really cool to have. And I love how it's completely shrouded, like the cooling and everything, so that the fan can get air over the engine. And then here's that one that I liked, my favorite one, with the gray and white one from the back. It's that same vehicle with the huge engine door, and it has a window on the back. So that's really, really nice. Another one there. So this one, yeah, I think it's like 52, 53 maybe, or 54. A fairly early one. And the landmark transporter, Heinz Nordhoff, in this picture, presents the 100,000th vehicle on October 9th, 1954, just in time for Oktoberfest. That's a really cool picture. I wish I could have. I need to find an excuse to use that in a video. So maybe this one. And some more literature, like sales illustrations of it. So maybe I should look again. I've always sort of wanted a model of one of these. I mean, I can't afford a real one, so I might as well do that, right? And then there's the first sort of facelift with larger rear window, smaller engine opening, and slightly larger Volkswagen Beetle style lights on the back. And still has the vents down here. So this is, it says this is from 1963, this one. The bullet-shaped front indicators were replaced by the larger disc lights. And so those are the bullet indicators on this one. So that's going to be like 1962. Oh, there's a really nice example right there. That one's also says 63 with the disc, the larger turning signals. And then the rear, this is one of the vehicles that I actually like how it looks from the rear almost better than the front for some reason. Okay, here's a really great spread of pictures. So this is like the earlier camper van. And this is when the split window version was discontinued and replaced by, which I think is my favorite version, where it has much larger windshield. The V has been changed to kind of a more rectangular, and then the turn lights have been moved down here. And pay attention on some of these pictures. The air vents on these, I noticed when I was a little kid, I used to call them combs because it looked like a hair comb. And the comb, or the air intake on the early 70s ones, a quarter moon, or a half moon shape. And then after 73, when they enlarge the rear lights, they actually become like more of a square and looks a lot like a hair comb. So that's where I get that from. It's completely silly, but it looks like a cargo transporter version there. And there's your half moon air intake. And it shows the new front end. So this is going to be the 1968. Starting in 1968, this is how they looked. 1968 from the rear, the rounded air intake, and then the rear lights now have a separate turn indicator and a larger opening hatch with much fewer windows on the side. So instead of the 21 window design, this is now it just has 3 windows along the sides instead of 9, I think is what it had on the older version. And then this looks like a tall version for a walk-in, so you can actually stand up inside for cargo. And I love how he shows some of the design here. So ventilation ducting, and so for the larger energy absorbing bumpers, struts, and side reinforcement since it's a cab over design. And then one of the pop-up campers, I loved these when I was little, and I remember seeing them at campsites when people actually used them to camp in still in the 80s. So now look at what I was saying earlier about the air intake in the back. This one says it's a 75 or 76. So from 74, the air intake back here changes from a half moon shape to a hair comb shape, and that's why I would call them combs. And then the front with the tire on the front, you got to have the spare tire on the front of the vehicle. And it would give you a little extra cushioning in the event of a collision, which you did not want to have in one of these. The top speed, it says, is just under 80 miles per hour. I wonder what it is today. A really nice 2-page of an orange one. Orange was like a popular color for cars back in the 70s. And I remember seeing orange ones, a lot, actually. So yeah, I wanted one of these when I was a kid. Absolutely wanted one. So the front indicators have been moved up now, up to here. And then you have your air vent up there, a smaller Volkswagen badge, same body style. So this goes up to 79. And then we get the Type 3, and that's they're going to call it the Vanagon, starting in 1979. So I think they're going to show some of the early Vanagons. 2-liter air-cooled engine as fitted on this model. So it started out, when introduced in 79, these still had the air-cooled engines. It's still an air-cooled Volkswagen. And according to this book, as I read it a while ago, the European air-cooled version was still made with an air-cooled engine until 81 or 82. I forget exactly which year. And the way you can tell that it's water-cooled, when they finally introduced water-cool, is the front right here. There's an extra vent down here. This tells you that it is a water-cooled version. And then the camper, which is starting to look pretty cool. And some more modern versions. This is now 2.1 liter utility truck. And this is 4-wheel drive, it says. It's got it's a 4x4. So yeah, they did quite a bit with these. And I don't know as much about these. I was never as familiar with these. They didn't sell that many versions of this car in the US. A lot of these are either European versions, or we're going to see pretty soon is going to get into the Mexican and Brazilian versions. So here's the Type 4, and then we get into the modern ones and all the variants. So there's like a lot of variants of this. There's going to be the pickup truck first, one with the crew cab, and then a dumper truck version. And I can't believe that. I doubt that held up very well over time. I don't know with that hydraulics, just with a 1.6 liter air-cooled driving it. But look at these. You can get an actual fire ladder that they would build for you. Look at that. So yeah, this was a pretty versatile vehicle. It's not surprising why they stayed around so long. They're finally giving us a rear view of what the larger enlarged taillights look like on a pickup truck version that looks to be heavily worn. And then the Vanagon pickup truck version right here. An ice cream truck version. And then, tell me that's not a dentist office. In ambulance interior. Well, it would make a better dentist office. I don't think you're going to get to the hospital in time with this riding in one of these. But, yeah, so the fire engines and a hearse. Oh, God. Oh, here's a lovely picture, though. Then one of the 21 window with a soft top, folded back. And these are now worth, these are being sold for $50,000. And here's the last edition, called the Silverfish. The Silverfish microbus from 1979. Which is supposed to mean, the silver edition. It's not 50 years, but it's, it's just the end of production line. So that's a 79 right there. For the European version, now let's look at some of the South American versions. Right here, this is the Brazilian transporter with the water-cooled engine. So in Brazil, they actually kept the old body in production as late as 2006. And it was air-cooled until that time, and then they switched to using water-cooled, which is why it's got this radiator on the front on here. I think they show a bunch of these. Had slightly different specifications. The window configuration and tailgate engine compartment is slightly different. This is a Kombi Luxo. And it has a D on it, though, so I don't know. Something's making me think that is a German vehicle. They're saying it's Brazilian produced, though. And here's another Brazilian one right here. And that's going to be 1967, that one is. And then this is 1976. So it looks like they're behind a few years. Here's 2003. Check this out. an ad from 2003, and that's like a 1970s design, still in production in Brazil in 2003. So maybe I should go there to get one. Yeah, and is that '05? Is that what that says? Yes, it's a 2005 brochure shot of it's still air cooled with a black. It has a blackout vent on the front. But yeah, there it is in 2005, sales literature, built in Brazil. And some more Brazilian ones, some more Brazilian transporters. They finally ended the specification of the air-cooled engine in 2005. And this is the Kombi Seria Prata, a special edition run-out model that was limited to 200. Each vehicle is finished in a silver color along with green tinted windows. So they did a silver version also to close out the air-cooled. And there's the interior, which is pretty modern, nice modern seats that you're used to seeing in a more modern vehicle. And then, starting in the 2006 model year, they put a water-cooled engine, so it'll be a lot quieter, and that radiator on there. And that's why it looks like that. That's just really amazing. I never knew that. I learned that from this book. I had no idea that these cars were still in production. I knew the Beetle was produced in Mexico until I think 2003, but I didn't realize these lasted that long. And this book's published in '07, so they were still in production at the time of this book. So when did they stop building them? So then here's some hippie versions and everything else. So yeah, this is a really great little book, and I definitely recommend getting a copy if you like these these cars. They're one of my favorite cars. I guess I haven't really talked about them much just since, I don't know, it's something I've always wanted to own one, except never got around to it. I hope you enjoyed looking at it with me. You can always leave a comment and throw a like on the video. It'll help share it around a bit. You can share it as well. And subscribe to my channel. I look at a lot of different car books. I've looked at several. I checked my shelf today and I've noticed that I've really gone through quite a few. Let me know what you thought of this video, and I'll see you in another one. Take care. Bye.